So, tell us about the struggle to adapt the comic into the movie.
So since you're my first table, you should know that I'm going to be working out the material here. And by the time I get to the last table, I'm going to...
We're professionals here, don't worry.
You know what, I looked at my job. It was basically to not ruin Flashpoint. I was working on a little show maybe you've heard of. I was working on Green Lantern, the animated series, and Alan Burnett called me up, and I went to his office, and he said, Alan, and I'm sure you all know who Alan is, and he said, Jeff Johns has this new thing that's going to happen, and I've been doing this a long time, and he really has been doing this a long time. He said, and there are about 10 different superhero stories, and he found an 11th story, so you should really do this. And I was like, sure. And they just sent me scripts and the pencils, not the pencils I just got bombarded. So I would get the pencils without the balloons filled in, and then I got the scripts, and I had to try and match them up, and also I don't know if anybody else has this kind of mental thing where it's like, if you're out in the regular world with regular people, everyone knows that you know more about comic books than they do. But then suddenly you come here, and then you get and Canterbury Cricket shows up in the comic book, and you're like, oh yeah, I know Canterbury Cricket. He's I knew him as a kid, and you have to
where's my smartphone?
Exactly. You're like bluffing your way through all of this huge cast of heroes and villains, and some of them are brand new, and some of them are, reimaginings of old ones, and so it was daunting. But I guess what I had to do, my job was to look at all this material, and it really was a daunting amount of material, and pare it down to a containable story that we could tell, in the length of a TV, and I suppose when it releases tomorrow, we'll find out how we did.
You talked about working on Green Lantern, and in this one you write a different version of Hal as opposed to the one that's in the animated series. How was that?
What was fun about that is I knew what Nathan Fillion would do, because I'd seen the First Flight, and everybody knows what he does, and it's so great. I didn't really have to change our Hal from the series. Josh Keaton is really good, but essentially they do play it the same way. That he's brave and fearless and all these wonderful things, and he's also a little bit of an ass. He's a little bit conceited, and he's a little bit full of himself, which he's not, if you go way on the other end of him, he's not Guy Gardner. He's probably right in the middle. Guy Gardner's here, Superman's here, and Hal is somewhere in here, which you admire him, and you just a little bit loathe the qualities in him that remind you of yourself. And so he was really fun to write as just kind of a cocky pilot who, and there's even just a hint of it that he seems like he's looking for something that makes him special. There was something that happened in our world, the real world, that made him special that he never got to do in the Flashpoint world, and so I thought it was nice. He got to be that arrogant guy, but he also had that kind of regret moment but he finally gets to do something heroic, which you'll see if you haven't seen it yet.
Now, writing the characters from a slightly different perspective, we still have to hold on to these same kind of archetypes that they hold true to. But did you find it an interesting challenge to give a slightly different spin onto it?
Yes, that's the whole fun of it. It's in the nerdy Star Trekness of my universe. It's all a mirror where you get to take some kind of core element of a character that you know and love so well, and then what would happen if we just do something a little bit different? They have to be the same guy, but they just have to do something wonderfully different. And that was a thrill. And a lot of it, of course, was in that Jeff already did, but it was kind of fun to take that and pare it down and just give. Obviously, you can't translate a comic book word for word, so it was fun to take those versions of those characters and find fun things for them to say.
With Flashpoint being, which was that very end, led us right into the New 52. Did you know that was going to happen? And if you did you feel like it was going to be sort of a daunting task, like it was going to lead to new DC animated features?
No, I had no idea. I'd like to be in the know on that, but
Would it help a little?
it didn't really. I mean, like I wrote it thinking that at the end they were going to be exactly the same as they were in the beginning, and when we get to the end, it is that same change that was in the comics. But when you're just reading the script to the comic book, it's such a subtle. It's just like a parenthetical. I'm going to misquote it. It's essentially, Superman isn't wearing panties now, and I'm like, okay, fine, I don't care. It didn't make that much difference to me. I didn't really, I didn't understand what the scope of those changes would entail. But I think it hangs together. Whether you come to this not knowing anything about the New 52, I don't think. If you've never heard of it, you can watch the movie, and I don't think it's going to change how you react to it.
Yeah, but this was it's an entrance into, so it's kind of interesting to see whether or not they're going to take this and make new.
Yes, absolutely. It will be interesting to do that. I'm going to be interested to see how people, how they like these versions of the characters, and I don't mean the Flashpoint version, but the voice actors are fantastic, and I think the designs are so cool. I'll find it very interesting to see if people come to love them, or, as is often the case, first we hate them, and then we see them, and then we love them, and when they don't make any more, then we're mad. That's the life cycle of how we feel about. I'm learning that slowly. It's like, I hate it. Oh, it's pretty good. Oh, it's leaving? It's canceled? Oh, that's a disaster.
With all the miniseries that were attached to Flashpoint, it was, say, a lot of them. Was there just something you really loved, you wished you could have kept in, but it just didn't fit?
Oh yeah, there was talk for a while of possibly doing the whole Batman story, the whole and as a totally separate. Oftentimes these DTVs have a short and a long is not the right word. Yeah, the feature. I wrote the long on this one, and there was talk of the short one being just that story, which is a very strong story. But I think it didn't materialize at the last minute. But there's a huge nod to it, and
that might have taken it too dark.
Well, buckle up, man. it's like
I know, but that's the darkest of the miniseries.
Yes, that's true. But this surprised me. I'm not a very dark person, But like once you read the source material, there's a moment of, because I'm a man of a certain age, and when I picture all these characters, I picture the Super Friends. Not even Challenge of the Super Friends. I mean, Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog Super Friends. So like seeing them do these horrible things in what's essentially the hell version of the DC universe was like, oh well, that will be unusual.
What now?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Superman's not supposed to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yes, there really is. But then once you kind of once you decide to do it, you have to make that commitment. It's like, otherwise it's neither fish nor fowl. If like I've worked in television so long that when I read them, my first impulse was almost, okay, how can I tone this down to make it, like, that's just my default setting, is like, how do I make this okay for 10 o'clock Saturday morning? And the answer is, there is no way to make this okay. So in that case, you just go kind of grand guignol and just go for it, and it's like, are there any more eyes I could gouge out, in the next 4 pages, and then if they're not, it's like, oh, darn.
Shakespeare did it, good enough for me.
Exactly. But to answer your question that was asked long ago,
Full circle, it's nice.
I think I touched everybody I wanted to see from there. I saw, you know what I mean? Like the demon came up, and like when you're pulling out your rhyming dictionary to do some demon dialogue, that's a blast. And, I mean, we saw Grifter in the coat, and I'm so glad Lois Lane made it in there, and that Dana Delaney's doing the voice, because it's like, oh, that's her, And they all got to do something interesting. Like, if there was no room for them and they didn't have something interesting to do, then they basically didn't make it in. There's no, like it's a lot to explain about Frankenstein and the Agents of Shadow. That's a long That's a long pause to go. And I believe you know Frankenstein and his So, but I think I got it. I mean, even Canterbury Cricket's in there, so everybody is touched on. And then there, which by the way, I would like to take credit for all of it, but there's a ton of characters that I didn't write in that are in the background and doing something interesting, something to make everybody happy. So everyone should buy one.
You're talking about the Bible, right?
Yes.